Samsung just admitted something Galaxy S26 buyers really won't like. Your next upgrade might cost more, and not because Samsung wants it to. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps me keep bringing you more tech breakdowns like this one. Here's the surprising part. This isn't a leak or a rumor from the supply chain. This came straight from a top Samsung executive. In a recent interview, Samsung openly acknowledged that rising component costs are pushing the company toward a point where repricing future flagship phones may be unavoidable. And while no phone was named, let's be honest, this conversation is clearly about the Galaxy S26 series. Why does this matter? Because Samsung has spent years trying to hold the line on flagship pricing, even as phones got more powerful, more complex, and more expensive to build. If Samsung, one of the biggest and most vertically integrated tech companies in the world, is struggling to absorb costs, that tells us something important about where the smartphone market is headed next. The biggest issue is components. Semiconductors, memory, and advanced chips are getting more expensive, not slightly, but significantly. Earlier reports already suggested Samsung was having a hard time reducing costs, and now those reports have essentially been confirmed. Won-Jin Lee, Samsung's president and head of global marketing, said prices are going up even as we speak, and that Samsung may soon have to seriously consider passing some of that burden on to consumers. That's a pretty direct statement, especially from someone at that level. Memory prices are a huge part of this story. Samsung's own DRAM division posted a record-breaking $19.2 billion in revenue in the fourth quarter of 2025. That sounds like a win, and it is, but it also tells us how sharply memory prices have surged in just a few months. And remember, memory isn't optional anymore. Modern flagships rely heavily on high-speed RAM and storage for AI features, camera processing, and multitasking. What's ironic here is that Samsung actually has an advantage most companies don't. It manufactures its own memory. In theory, that should protect it from price shocks, but even Samsung isn't immune. If Samsung is feeling the pressure, imagine how brands that rely entirely on third-party suppliers are coping. This isn't just a Samsung problem, it's an industry-wide squeeze. Add to that rising labor costs, higher marketing expenses, and increasingly complex phone designs, and suddenly the math stops working the way it used to. Companies can only cut costs internally for so long before something has to give. In this case, pricing is the most obvious pressure point. Now, there is some potentially good news, especially for buyers in the US. Reports suggest Samsung may not apply price increases evenly across all regions. Instead, it could raise prices in markets like South Korea while keeping US pricing relatively stable. That actually makes sense. The US is one of Samsung's most important markets by volume. Keeping prices competitive there helps protect sales, market share, and overall revenue. Samsung could absorb or offset some of the increases internally to avoid scaring off American buyers, at least for another cycle. But that also means other regions may not be so lucky. Outside the US, the Galaxy S26 series looks increasingly vulnerable to price hikes. And with confirmation now coming directly from Samsung leadership, it's hard to dismiss this as just speculation. The bigger takeaway here isn't just that phones might get more expensive, it's why. Smartphones are no longer simple devices. They're packed with advanced chips, AI hardware, high-end memory, and camera systems that rival dedicated equipment. Every generation adds more cost under the hood, even if the external design doesn't change much. So the real question becomes, how much of a price increase are people willing to tolerate? An extra $50 might be manageable for some. A $100 jump starts to feel uncomfortable. Push beyond that, and many users may simply skip upgrading altogether. From my perspective, this puts Samsung in a tricky position. Raise prices too much and you risk slowing upgrades. Hold prices steady and margins take a hit. Either way, the era of predictable flagship pricing seems to be ending. Nothing is officially confirmed yet, and plans can still change, but between rising semiconductor costs, record-high memory prices, and Samsung openly acknowledging the pressure, the message is clear. The Galaxy S26 may be the first Samsung flagship where higher prices feel less like a choice and more like a necessity. What's your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section. See you in the next video. Take care.